Okay, so here's what we're going to be going over today. So I have the art space file opened in Photoshop, and then what we're going to do is take a look at comparing file sizes between files so we get optimal resolution. Most of what we do in this class are taking existing images that we find or that we take ourselves and then combining them to create some sort of a scene. So we want to make sure that the sizes are compatible with one another. In addition to that, I'm going to teach you how to duplicate within a file and then also between files. It works a little bit differently. And then we're going to look at transformations a little bit more. Next week we're going to get into transformations a lot more. And then also we are going to look at resizing images as well as objects. So let's start with trying to find the best file size for this image right here. What we want to do is find a new sky. As I mentioned last week, this image was taken on kind of a gray, dreary day. So all of us together are going to go online and find a sky to replace it with. Before we do that, what I want to do is to have everybody check to see how large this image is. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and the dimensions of this image, it's 1200 pixels wide by about 850 pixels tall. So that lets us know that if we're looking for a sky, if we find a sky that's only like 400 pixels wide, is that big enough to fit here? It won't be. What'll end up happening is it'll get stretched. And if you have ever taken like a rubber band, a balloon, maybe even like fabric and stretched it, you know how the image ends up looking really distorted and hard to see? That same thing happens in Photoshop. It takes those pixels and it stretches them to where they're pixelated and somewhat unlegible. So let's do this. Now that we know that this is 1200 pixels wide, let's use Google Chrome to search for an image. And the reason why I say Google Chrome is so that when I search sky, your sky will look like mine. So I'm just going to type in sky. And when I go to images, these are the first things that come up. So I'm looking around. So my screen looks like Maddie's and Megan's, everybody that I can see. Good. The other thing that you can do while you're in here is if you hover on a picture, do you see how it'll tell you roughly what size it is? Okay. You could also go to Tools up here right under the search. And then under size, if you do large, to be honest, I don't know what Google considers a large image, but everything here is at least 1000 pixels. Did everybody find that okay? Yeah? Okay, good. Now let's all pick one of these. Let's be completely, well, do you guys want to do this kind of beachy one or the one next to it? A or B? A? Okay. One thing we have to check, and this is such a pain, is a lot of images now. So like I could just right click on this and do Save Image As. And we just need to make sure that the file comes in as a large image, or sorry, not just as a large image, but as an actual JPEG. I'll see if I can find an example. Right now it says Save as JPEG Image. I'll call it Sky Background. Oh no, it's doing it. Do you guys see that this saved as a JFIF and not a JPEG? I am fighting the internet trying to get around this, but I haven't been able to get around it yet without getting some other programs. So let me try the one next to it. I'm going to see if this one will save normally. And I'm actually going to go to View Image instead and see if this one will work. It did? Why doesn't it like me? Let me try it one more time. Okay, this is a different file, but I will take it. Okay, that one did come as a JPEG. Okay, good. All right. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and open it up in Photoshop. And then the next part that I'm going to show you is how you copy files between files and then how you do it within the file. So for the first part, I think they're all pretty straightforward. So remember, we've got file to file, and then within a file. So with our first example, let's right-click on the layer that we want to duplicate. And do you see that it actually says duplicate layer right there? What we want to do though is it wants to know what the layer is going to be called. And if I remember correctly, last time when I changed it, by the time it moved it to the new layer, it didn't save the layer name. But I'll try it again. So I'm just going to call this sky. So that'll be the new layer name, I hope. And do you see how under destination it asks what document? We actually want to move that to the art space assignment. You could even make a new file out of it too. But for this one, we want to send it to art space. And then go ahead and click OK. And now let's check. So see how it ignored what I called it? It's still called background. I'm going to rename that sky. Yes.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Off topic a little bit. So I did this at home and it didn't work, so I just tried to do it here and it did the same thing. So when you create the test box and you
Mm-hmm.
do G and you're supposed to paint it blue, why is it doing, like mine has
The gradient.
It was erased box, even though, like I used the magic tool. Is that because I used the magic wand?
So when you paint with a paint bucket, all you need to do, let's pretend I didn't have the test layer. So I rename it test, right? I hit G for paint bucket, and mine is set to paint bucket. I can grab whatever color, I'll do it red maybe, and then I should just be able to click and paint.
Oh, you just click over it, because it like did only in a corner, but if I clicked on it everywhere. So
Yeah, just fill up the whole layer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Got it?
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So let me go back to the sky. Now going back to the first day of class, so remember I'm in V right now, so I'm back in selection mode. Do you guys remember from that first day of class how you can quickly transform something? We went over it really quickly. It's okay if you don't. It's Control T. And when you do Control T, can you see on my screen? I have the sky layer activated. And do you see how the sky layer, since it's bigger than the art space layer, it's showing me the frame all the way out here? So now what I can do, and let me show you that one more time. So I have sky selected. That's the one I want to transform. I hit Control T, and then I can grab these toggle points, and I can even, if I wanted to, I can bump up the sky so it gets a little bit more dramatic. Okay, so try to situate that sky, and then when you're done, you hit Enter, and it should keep your transformation. So a basic transformation in Photoshop Photoshop is done by hitting Control plus T. For now, all we're doing with our transformation is really resizing. You can, if you want to, if you go to the corner, you can't see it on my screen, but like a double-headed arrow comes up, you can also rotate it if you need to. But my sky's pretty even, so it matches the horizon. So that's how you get a new background into this assignment right here. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is how we go from file to file. Now eventually what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to go online and give me at least 2 or 3 different sky options. So here you might do like nighttime sky, sunset sky. Grab a few different skies for me, bring them in, make sure that they're the right size, and then in addition to that, I also want you guys to bring in 1 to 2 other objects that I want you to mask and pull into the image. So something that looks like it belongs to the scene. Some examples that I've seen in the past, a lot of people like to put people walking in the parking lot. I've seen things go in the windows, I've seen things in the sky, but just to kind of help or to keep going with that notion of opening objects, make sure that the pixels are the right size for the image, masking it, and then duplicating it in here. Okay? Yeah, Maddie? So with that, it's essentially locked its proportions, but so if I go from this side, it does the same thing, but you should be able to go to the corner too. There you go. That looks right to me. Yeah, so essentially you always want it to be in proportion, so it's better to do it. If you want to unlock it, you can by clicking this unlock right here. Like right now on a sky, it might not be so noticeable, but if you were to stretch like a person or any other thing, it would be really obvious that it was out of proportion. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time back over to you guys now. Now when I do assessments like this, I don't include rubrics so that you guys can kind of recall what you think should be the correct way of doing it. So I was looking for the mask, a test layer to show the contrast of what has been masked, layer organization and naming, and really that's as simple as calling layer 0 artichoke light or light, you know, and then correct file used. So these were the 4 parameters that I was looking at. Let me scoot this over just so it stays private, but I wanted to let you know that of all the submissions, so let me go back, sorry. On those 4 things I was grading, the test layer was worth 3 points of extra credit. So essentially the high grade that you could get was 18 out of 15. Does that make sense? So that was extra credit. So the average grade was 14.43, and so a 96 average in this class, which is really good. Now what I want to do is show you guys areas where people may have lost points, so you can see maybe some better examples of masking and then some that can be improved on. So this is a good example here. It has the right name. I would also like to see this be called test instead of just layer 1. And then one thing that I deducted for is I think some of the blades look a little bit choppy. So just watch out on how you're selecting these, but I would like all of these to look nice and smooth. Okay, let me close that one out. Now for the next one, so this is an excellent example of layer organization. It's even in its own group. Let me put a test background on there. So pretty smooth. There are some choppy areas here, and there's even a little area that's missed. So that's why those test layers always help, but overall pretty smooth. Now this one right here pretty much hit every parameter, Everything was organized, even grouped. Everything was named correctly. And then if you look, this one is really smooth here. Okay. A lot of these I started adding the test, but this one may have been here. This one is another example of a really smooth selection as well. So you can see the blades still look smooth. It doesn't look like there's any chunks taken out of them. The opposite of that is it doesn't look bumpy either. And all of the strings have been preserved too. Same with this example, pretty clean and smooth. Strings have been preserved. And we've got assessment and test. This one right here, so good layer organization, I'm pretty sure I added the test layer. But this one right here, you can see that a lot of the blades have kind of chunks taken out of them. And so I'm assuming that some of these chunks might be from trying to use the brush tool. The brush tool doesn't really get you smooth shapes, but you can try and use any of the lasso tools. Sometimes the magic wand is pretty smooth, but try to use those to clean them up a little bit. This one was interesting because it was really smooth on one half, but then not the other half. So the student may have just ran out of time, but really good organization here too. Here's another really good clean example. Maybe one of the better. The strings were missed, but the artichoke light itself looks pretty good. Here's another really good clean example and really good file organization. Folder plus the different layers. I would have preferred that this be called light, even though it is within light mask, but just to be consistent. Okay. Here's another one that may have just moved around a little bit. Like the lights are no longer at the top, it kind of got moved down, and again, some chunks are missing and then some are a little bit bumpy. And it might just have to do with the tool that was being used to select. But the strings look pretty good despite losing its connection above. Okay, just a few more. So here's another clean example, really smooth. You can see it against the background and the strings look good. Here's another really strong example. Now this one, I think the most unfortunate thing that happened is that when the student was trying to make their test layer, let's see, oh there's two test layers here. Okay, I was mistaken on that. I thought that the artichoke light ended up being painted on, but that one needs a little bit of work. We can keep practicing. This is the one that I saw, sorry. So this is the unfortunate part. So when they're making the test layer, I assume at some point before or after, their actual layer got colored with the blue. So you can always back up and undo, but just looking at how the paint was put on here, I can't tell if the kind of outer part just needed to be masked a little bit more. Okay. But overall, I think you guys did a really good job, especially at a 96%, just a few weeks into the semester. Today is an opportunity to keep practicing, you know, so take a look at some of the notes that I just shared with you guys. If the brush is just leaving things a little bit too hazy, like I said, move on to some of the other tools to make it a little bit cleaner. That works typically. If you just click on the image, you should be able to duplicate. Let me put it into sky background and let's see what it does. So this one pulled in. One thing to make sure of, let me try it this way. If I had the mask selected and I tried duplicating it, let me see what happens then. So duplicate layer, sky background. It still brought in both of them. So Soren, check this for me. Make sure that this link is still on. By default, it should always have that chain on so the two of them move together. But if that may have gotten unselected, maybe it's not working.
It's not even giving me I don't have all the same options.
Oh, okay, so this is where it gets really picky. The first thing I would do is hit V to make sure that you're in the selection tool. Okay. And then after that, right click on, so now, right click on the layer name. So see how when I went to the image, I couldn't see it? But when I went to the name, now I can duplicate it. Coming over here, yep, that changed it too. Did that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So again, in Files, if you type in slcc, you should be able to find this slcc bug stacked. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to right click and go to Save Link As. And I already have that digital graphics folder that I'm going to put it in. So again, Files, search for slcc, and it should be the only thing that pops up. And then to let me know that you're ready, go ahead and have your screen open to this right here. And open it up. And then as soon as I see the slcc on your screens, that'll let me know that you're ready. Okay, looks good. Almost. I said looks good and 3 of them went away. I think we're okay. So now that you have this, what I'd like you to do is right click on it, go to duplicate layer, and let's bring it into our art space. Oh, weird. Yeah. Yeah, let me. It might give you a warning about the color space that should be. Great. Okay. And then let's see, where am I? Oh, and this is a very big logo, so mine came in really big. And yours probably looks the same way, correct? Maybe? There you guys are. Now remind me again, what is the shortcut to resize this? Control T, good. So if we do Control T, grab these corners, just make it smaller. And I'm just going to put a little logo on the side of the building. I know that the perspective is wrong, but that'll give us 1. And then after you get the 1 in there, what I'd like to do next is show you how to duplicate a layer within a file, because sometimes you're going to want a lot of one thing. So Disney logos, if you want to do more than one, or sometimes people bring in plants or grass, even people. What you can do to duplicate your layers, the first thing is similar to what we did before. Duplicate layer, and you can leave it right here in art space and go OK, and it does a copy. Before, we changed the destination to another file, but I just want to keep it right in here. So again, right-click, duplicate layer, and in document, just keep it in ArtSpace. So by default, it'll show the layer that you're working in. Now, I already deleted that one. Personally, I think that's kind of like a long way of doing it. There's two other ways. Do you remember our new layer button? You can take a layer and drag it down to the new layer button, and it automatically makes a copy of it. Try that, and then move it to make sure that there is a copy, because by default, it's going to go right on top of it. So this is what this little drawing is. It means drag layer to the new layer icon. Okay? Were you guys able to get that to work? Yeah? And then the next way, while you're working and you are in the move selection, you can't see it on my screen, but hold the Alt key and then tell me what happens to your arrowhead. Yeah, it's like a double-headed arrow. One's black, one's white. Oops, wrong layer. And what that allows you to do is to also duplicate the layer. And this is probably your fastest way. So you can make a ton of these by just holding down the Alt, and every time you click, it makes a copy. Okay. So if you ever needed to make duplicates within a file, that's how you guys would do it. Any questions about that? Okay. So we haven't learned a lot of new stuff today. Most of this class, again, is going to focus on masking. So the most important thing is that all of you guys get comfortable with masking. So take a look at the comments that I gave you on your masks. Maybe retry it again if you need to. Try to find a better way of doing it. And what we're doing now is we're starting to combine files. So duplicating between different files, even duplicating layers within the files. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Transforming them. And then when we come back next week, we're going to add another another technique to transformation. We'll start pulling in some perspective and doing a little bit more to our transformations. Now for this week, all of the prep that you guys did last week is going to kind of come together again. So your Salk Institute and the paraglider, you're also going to add a sky to it and then add a couple more objects to it. The Villa Savoy, that white modern building, you're going to find an image of Utah, a background of Utah, and put that building in a background of Utah and transform it so it looks like it fits correctly. So that's what we're going to be working on. Really similar to what we're doing with ArtSpace, but just with the other files that you prepped. Okay, so keep going on this one. Let me know if you guys need help. We have about an hour of lab time to just work, so I'm here if you guys need some help or need any clarification. So Taylor just asked, how do you save this as a JPEG? Because this week I want your PSD file and a JPEG. So when you're done, go ahead and save the PSD as you always would. But to save a JPEG, you guys can even try this along with me. You go to File and then Save As. So File, Save As. And then right underneath file name, do you see where it says Save as Type? So if you pull down on that, it's the one that only says JPEG, not the 2000 or the stereo, but just JPEG. And then that way I'll get a flat image that I'll be able to open and mark up as well.
But you want both, right?
Yep, I always want both. Thanks.
Not just one of the skies.
Yep. And then in the PSD file, I'll be able to verify the other two.